have located GeekFest Rants, the entertainment podcast for genre geeks like you.
Shall we play a game?
Covering the world of vintage and current film and television since 2010.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Featuring in-depth conversations on sci-fi, horror, fantasy, comics, toys, and conventions.
So say we all. So say we all.
And now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show.
Taday. Anyone hear me? Over. This is U.S. Station 31. You read me? Found something in the ice. We need some help down here. Can anybody hear me? We found something. We found something. We found something.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? He can beat one of those things!
Hi everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and today we are going to be talking about The Thing. Now, I know we've discussed the movie in the past in a number of different fashions, but today we are going to concentrate on the order of assimilation. This is something that people have been debating for over 41 years now, as to exactly who gets assimilated in what order throughout the film. And I've done a little bit of research and listened to a lot of different opinions from different people, and I think I kind of got it down, at least a section of it, a point of view of it, of how it happens. After that, we are going to jump to the toy side, because I've recently gotten a couple of new, I guess you can call them NECA The Thing figures, and also some old McFarlane The Thing figures that I want to talk about, because man, some of these I've been looking for a very long time, and finally I've been able to get a hold of a couple of them. So let's just get started right now with The Thing.
What did I teach you?
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Can you dig it?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
That spawn of Satan.
Oh, really?
The Force will be with you, always.
Very recently, as it happens many times, I've kind of fallen down the rabbit hole of one of my genre interests. This time being The Thing. Become obsessed with trying to figure out some of the unanswered questions of the film. Specifically, the order of assimilation. Who gets turned into a thing in what order? In the film, there are certain characters that we see them when it happens. We see who turns them. We see them already turned, but we don't see when they were turned. We see characters that were never the Thing who die in the film. But one of the ongoing questions in the fan community of The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, is in the scene where the dog enters one of the bunk rooms and you see a shadow, and we assume that that was the first person to be assimilated amongst the crew. And for a very long time, it's gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in terms of who it could be. Now, the general consensus seemed to be that it's narrowed down to 2 characters. Who could that be? But before we get to that, let's give a little bit of a background here. One resource, which is an amazing resource to find out this sort of information, and where I did a lot of my digging, is the website Outpost 31. It is everything having to do with the thing. You know, you find your clips, your pictures, your information, your backgrounds. The guy that runs the site, his name is Todd Cameron, is an author, and he's put out an actual book having to do with the thing. And he's also put out a free downloadable secondary book, if you will, of what he thinks, his version of events that we did not see in the film. So in other words, he tries to fill in all the holes. And we'll talk about that too a little later in terms of his theories of where we're at. But one of the other very important, very useful things that we find in this website is a series of maps that were created so we can kind of see, you know, where things are located in terms of, okay, well, you know, the building is this big and it has a room over here and a room over there. And when it comes to the order of how and who got infected first, there's a specific map there that probably holds the key to the answer. Now, let me tell you also that there are tons of videos of people who theorize, just like Mr. Cameron, about the order of things. And they're very good videos. And what drives me crazy is that depending on what video I'm watching, I kind of like follow it. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That makes perfect sense. That is more likely one character than the other. And then I watch another video and I get the opposite effect. I'm like, wow, this guy does make a very good point. So there is a lot of back and forth. And it's really difficult to kind of figure it out. But let's go down the list, first of all, so we can kind of narrow down what we're talking about here. The main characters from the Outpost are McReady, obviously the hero of the film. We do not see him die, and we do not have any solid proof that he is the Thing. You know, he's the hero. Then you have Childs. Childs also is one of the last survivors, if you will, of the story. We never see him get infected. We have our suspicions. We have very serious reasons to suspect him at the end, but there is no, legitimate proof. Now, keep in mind that at a certain point in the story, when McReady is doing the blood test, he's able to prove that certain characters are not the Thing. And for example, Childs, when he's doing the test, Childs was negative. And so was McReady. He was negative. Gary, the station commander, manager, if you will, same thing. When he was given the test, he passed the test. He was human. However, later in the film, he is one of the last ones to be killed by the Thing. So we know exactly what happened to him. Windows also was somebody that passed the blood test. He was not a Thing. However, because he's attacked right after the test and infected, he is also killed. But he never was, he was suspected because of the paranoia going on and the accusations and the characters that probably accused each other knowing that they were the Thing, trying to cast doubt on everybody else about their other team members. But yeah, technically he was at the end, but obviously he didn't have a chance to do anything about it because he was killed right away. Then you have Bennings. Bennings is his job, technically, he's the meteorologist. And he is the guy that gets shot in the beginning in the leg, and he is converted in one of the storage rooms. They find them all covered up in this gooey tentacle thing, because in the same room they were keeping the thing they found, at the Norwegian camp. He is the guy also that runs out with the funky looking hands because he's not fully transformed into a Thing. And that's where he dies. He dies right there. We know exactly more or less how it happened. It seemed to have happened through the still alive corpse of whatever the hell it is, that thing they found. Going back a couple of steps here, Windows that I talked to you about before, his job is the radio operator, just in case you guys need to know. Childs is the mechanic, the chief mechanic, the main mechanic, and McReady is the helicopter pilot. Anyway, going forward, Dr. Copper. Dr. Copper is the doctor of the group. He also is never infected. However, he dies as a result of the chest biting sequence when he administers the paddles on the chest of Norris, and then the jaws come out and bite him. So he died. Now, he also, again, passed the test when McCready was doing the blood test. Blair, he's the biologist, the head biologist there. It's funny because we never get a chance to give him the test. And we know he flips out at a certain point, and he flips out because he knows the truth. He understands how dangerous this thing is, so he goes completely bananas to try to isolate this thing earlier than anybody else. But in the process, somewhere off camera, he is converted, assimilated, whatever you want to call it, infected, and becomes one of the things. There's a lot of possibilities of when it could happen. Most likely while he's in the shed, being kept prisoner. Somebody must have snuck in there and converted him. Then you have Fuchs. He's the assistant biologist. He dies, let's see, off camera. We don't know exactly how, but they do find his charred body outside, which it could go either way. We don't know if somebody burned him on purpose or if he burned himself. We don't know if he killed himself. We don't know that. We just don't know. He never had a chance to take the test because he died before that happened. Norris. Norris is a very interesting one because his job, first of all, is geologist. But with Norris, he obviously never takes the test because he's the one that triggers that entire sequence of the chest biting the arms of Doc. With Norris, you have a character that starts to show signs of something's wrong with him, but it seems to be more of a medical issue. In other words, a real, actual medical issue, possibly a heart attack or something like that. But we find out as a result of that heart attack, of him practically dying, or sort of dying, that he is a thing. And part of the problem is that we never see his conversion. We never see him actually be caught and transformed by any other things. So he's one of these mystery guys. Then you have Clark, the dog handler. He's human as far as we know. There is a lot of suspicion about him, especially Blair suspects him a lot because he spent so much time with the dogs and the dog that started everything. However, Clark is shot and killed, and then when the blood test is given, it was a negative test. Then you have Palmer. Palmer is the guy that fails the blood test. He is the assistant mechanic, so he works with Childs, basically. And yeah, he's the guy that completely goes nuts at a certain point and starts, he's responsible for killing Windows. So, he's been flying under the radar for most of this movie. We never saw it when it happened. Hard to really suspect him. It's really difficult. But yeah, when it happens, it happens. And then finally, there's Knowles, the cook. He, I believe, passes the test, if I remember right. We never see him assimilated. We never see him caught, but we do see him kind of disappear, which implies that the thing has him and either killed him or converted him or one or the other. So what that leaves us with is basically three characters who at one point become the thing, but we never see them become the thing. And by that, I'm talking about Blair, Norris, and Palmer. So if we kind of bring it back to the beginning of the movie of who is the first one, the first hint I think that we get of something going wrong or something weird happening is a shot that we get of the dog kind of wandering through the camp, going kind of room to room, and then getting to the section where he's at the bunk rooms. Now, on the map, like I said earlier, in the Outpost 31 website, there is a series of maps, and one of the maps shows you all the locations of those bunk rooms. You have 6 bunk rooms. And according to what I've read, now I'd like to verify this somewhere else, but according to what I read, out of the 12 characters in the story, only 10 of them use those particular bunk rooms. MacReady uses his shack outside, that high up shack that he lives in. So that's him, by himself down there. And Gary, the manager of the station, apparently has his own area, his own quarters away from the rest of the men. Because I guess it's like a rank thing. He's, like the captain of the ship gets the bigger quarter. Well, he apparently has a big one. I've not been able to confirm that yet in terms of, I did not see any scenes in the movie that I can remember of him being in his personal quarters. I've seen him being in his office and that sort of thing, but I haven't seen him in his actual personal quarters. However, in some of those maps that you could see, there is a section for his personal quarters. I don't know how accurate those maps are. In other words, I've never seen actual blueprints from John Carpenter or the production designer or somebody that can at least give you a layout of what it would look like. I believe most of these maps that Outpost 31 has are based on just watching the film and kind of piecing it all together, because there are other maps on other websites that kind of place certain things on different locations. So, we're kind of going with this layout of those 6 rooms being kind of connected, 3 and 3 across from each other. And we do see those 6 rooms in 3 scenes in the movie. The first scene is, again, when the dog is walking around and he comes through the door all the way on the end of the hallway, and he kind of peeks around. He looks into one room, and then he makes a turn for the opposite side, the last room on the right, if you're looking at it from the camera's point of view. And that's where he enters that room, and he has a shadow that turns and looks back and then fades to black. The assumption is that will be the first person infected. The difficult thing about that scene is that there's sources out there that indicate that originally they wanted Palmer to be the shadow, but they kind of figured that Palmer's shadow of the actor would have been too noticeable, and you would have known right away who it was. And if you're kind of making, if you're kind of adding things up and saying, well, who else could it be? Could it be Norris? Could it be Blair? Definitely not Blair. But it seems to fall somewhere between Norris and Palmer in terms of what the shadow looks like. But the other bit of information is that because they have such distinctive shadows, apparently they used a stuntman, I forget his name, to play the shadow, because they didn't want the shadow to be given away so easily by having the actual actor or the actual character generate that shadow. So in other words, if they put Palmer, you could see it's Palmer. If you put Norris, you could see it's Norris. So they purposely kind of made it a little bit ambiguous so the audience wouldn't be able to tell exactly whose shadow that was. So in that layout, like I said, even though there's 12 men, 10 of them are using those 6 rooms. And trying to figure out who's in which room, there's a lot of scenes in the movie that gives it away. And then the rest of it we have to kind of figure out on our own. So if we are looking at those rooms, or that hallway at least, from the camera's point of view, which happens a couple of times in the movie, like I said, the dog walking through. Then there's a scene where Bennings comes out of one of the rooms to complain about the sound of the radio. So we see those 6 rooms again. We know exactly which room he's coming out of. And then there's the scene where the alarm goes off and the dog things are going crazy. And a lot of people come out of rooms, again, all at the same time. We see that. We also have a scene where Palmer and Childs, we could see them sharing a room. And then we see another kind of reverse shot, in a way, from inside the room of Bennings telling Childs to go get the flamethrower because we have problems with the dogs or something like that. So that is all the information we have visually from the film as to where the heck everybody is. So let's go through them one by one, and I'll give you it's really, it'd be cool if you can look at the map as I'm telling you this, but I'll try to describe it as much as possible. So again, we're looking at 6 rooms, 3 on the left, 3 on the right, all of them facing each other. On the left side, the middle room, we see Bennings come out, like I mentioned before, when he hears the radio and he goes to the intercom screaming to lower the radio. So that's one. We do also see Childs and Palmer at an earlier point in the film sharing a room. Okay, so we know those two live together. We're not sure where at this point. The alarm goes off. Everybody jumps out of their rooms. This is the scene where we get the most amount of information as to where everybody bunks. So let's do the left side first. On the left side, on the far end of the left side, we see Fuchs come out and Dr. Copper. They both come out at the same time, more or less scrambling. So we know that they're on the far left side. Again, this is camera view. Second room on the left, we saw Bennings come out. And we also see Blair. Okay, so those two share a room. So that takes care of 4 people on the left side. We don't see anybody jumping out of the left first room, the nearest to the camera. So we don't see that one. Let's go to the right side now. The far end right side, we see windows come out. Okay, that's windows. Very good. Then the next one, right side middle, we see Knowles come out. Okay, that takes care of Knowles. And the very important here, the right side front, the first room on the right side from the camera's point of view, we see Palmer come out. So that means we can kind of cross out a lot of people as to where they sleep. You know, if we're trying to kind of, trace the way that the dog walked and if that first room. If we follow this path of the dog and who came out of that room, that tells us that the person that occupies that room is Palmer and Childs. And that shadow was definitely at least somebody who had hair on his head. And we know Childs is bald, and we know Palmer is not. So that's a very interesting thing right there. However, this is where things get weird. There are 2 characters that are unaccounted for as far as where do they sleep. One of them is Clark, dog handler, and the other one is Norris, the geologist, who is one of the 2 lead suspects of being the first person. So the question is, if you have 2 people per bunk, which makes sense, and if you have 3 of those bunks full with 2 people apiece, and then you have Windows and Knowles with 1 person apiece, who gets Norris and who gets Clark? So does Norris and Knowles share a room, or does Norris and Windows share a room? Vice versa. Just like, is it Clark and Knowles, or is it Clark and Windows? Which causes another unusual situation, and that is, if you double up those last 2 remaining people with the 2 single people, that leaves you with a 6th room that is empty. The room on the left, the first room on the left, would be empty if everybody doubles up. So are there purposely some people that are by themselves? So for example, if Clark bunks with Knowles, does Norris get his own room and then Windows gets his own room? How does that work? Who determines and how did they determine who gets what? The only thing we know for sure is that Mac has his shack outside and that Gary is somewhere else. Now, based on those rooms can accommodate 12 men, if you think about it. And there are 12 men. It's just that happens that 2 of them don't bunk with the rest of them. So mathematically that works, but in the reality of how it was decided or how, where people are, we don't know. Now, this is all kind of clear in terms of, okay, this is based on what we see in the movie. However, the movie is also a little inconsistent in terms of there are certain shots that I just talked about where you see things that are a little different depending on the angle. Maybe they're continuity errors. Maybe the angle is so different that it makes things look completely different. But for example, let me give you the easiest one of all of them. When the alarm goes off and everybody's scrambling there, the first room on the left, the door is closed. Okay. The next shot, we see Bennings coming into Childs and Palmer's room and telling Childs to get this flamethrower. You could see across, the door is open. Again, that's a continuity error probably. But what makes it even more glaring is the fact that it looks like there's a light on in there. It looks like somebody lives there. It looks like it's a used room. It's not just like a closed, dead room. So that kind of throws you a little more in the direction of, oh, wait a minute. Maybe one of these guys does use that room by himself. Okay, that's interesting. Another problem is that the shots of Bennings coming out to complain about the music, the shot of the dog walking around, and the shot of everybody going crazy when the alarm goes off, the items on the hallway don't necessarily match. Some of them kind of match, like Bennings and the dog match, but everybody scrambling doesn't match exactly. certain items are in the wrong locations. Now, you could say, well, that's okay. It could be a combination of continuity. And you could say, this happened the next day or hours later. So some boxes were moved and put somewhere else, or some paint cans were kind of used or something like that. So you can kind of get away with that. That's not that glaringly bad, but it just throws a little more confusion, to the whole thing. So again, all these things kind of help you put together or piece together the sequence of events or the series of events, in what order they happen. As a viewer, as a fan, if you will, you have to make that first decision of, Palmer or Norris. Which are you going to go with? But in some of these interviews that I read from Carpenter, where people do ask him very direct questions, not only him, but one of his producers, they don't give you an inch. They don't give you much, especially Carpenter. He's very quick with his answers. He doesn't give you an inch. His producer, on the other hand, is willing to go a little further, but still, there's certain lines he wouldn't cross. And the most we got out of him was the fact that, again, according to him, Palmer was supposed to be the person, that would be shot for the shadow, but then they decided not to. So that kind of gives you a little more weight in terms of the Palmer theory. The fact that as they're shooting it, they're thinking of him as that person, but they don't want us to know it's him, so they purposely substitute him with a different actor just to create confusion. So if you combine that, again, with the location of where his room is, okay, there's a little more evidence. The dog is going into his room. Now, another issue with, again, a combination of continuity and misdirection is that some people suggest that Palmer and Childs do not bunk together, that they just happen to be on the same room when they're watching TV and smoking, but they're not necessarily bunk mates, which, that could help part of the issue of the wall looking different, the bare wall when the dog is there, and then the full wall full of pictures and, cutouts or whatever that is decorated there. Yeah, that could help a little bit, but, there are certain things that kind of match. There is a little shelf on the dog scene where you can see the beginning of a little shelf that's up there, a wooden shelf with these L brackets right at the corner. And when you look at his room later, especially when Bennings comes in to tell Childs to get the flamethrower, you could see that same kind of bookshelf back there. Furthermore, when you do see both of them together, they're definitely in that room together. And you could not only see, I think you could see the shelf, but you could also see an outlet with one black plug, something plugged in, a line plugged in. And it's exactly in the same place. So there's no doubt that, that's the same thing. So it's kind of like, okay, so I think we might be dealing a little bit with a continuity problem there, just a continuity problem. Or again, it's misdirection. Is it possible that maybe Childs is the occupant of bunk number 6? Room number 6? It's possible. The 6th bunk, the one on the front that the door is open, the door is closed. But again, why would he be in Palmer's room, when they're all woken up, with the alarm? That happens I think if you look at the timeline, I think that happens at 1 a.m. or something. According to the Outpost 31 timeline, that happens at 4:30 in the morning, which, most of the people are all asleep. Not all of them, but most of them. And that's where Palmer comes out of that room and Childs comes out of that room. So, okay, I'm leaning a little more towards that theory, which makes sense. Even though, like I said before, anytime somebody brings up the Norris situation or the Norris silhouette or the Norris sweater, the little collar, the hair, it also makes a lot of sense too. Anyway, let me go back now to something else that I mentioned earlier, and that is in the Outpost31.com website, the guy that runs the website, Todd Cameron, he put out a series of books. His first book was called Snowblind, which, from what I remember, it was supposed to be the backstory of MacReady. And I bought the book. I read it. I loved it. It's a great backstory. It's a big, big adventure, of all the different things, from Vietnam to the 70s and I guess early 80s of how he ends up all the way up there, hiding from his past, like a lot of people, are that go all the way to hide in either Alaska or the Arctic or somewhere far away or Antarctica. Now, the thing about this book was that once I finally got it and started reading it, I noticed that, hey, wait a minute, these are different names, but it's definitely those characters with different names. And I could have swore I read somewhere in either a Facebook post or something having to do with the fact that he originally wanted to use the real names, but because of copyright issues, he didn't want to step over the line and, run into any legal problems by using those copyrighted names, I guess. So the names are very close. But again, we're only dealing with MacReady as the main character. So he has a different name for him. He calls him Richard McCarter instead of MacReady. So it's kind of weird that way. I wonder if there was any way that you could have implied that he changed his last name or he went by MacReady once he got to his final destination as part of his cover. But I think even implying that, in a printed book that is sold, that could have also been a red flag too. So, a legal red flag. So the good thing is that we all, the people, I'm pretty sure all the people that bought the book understand where he's coming from and who we're dealing with. And again, it's a great backstory in terms of being able to give a lead character, a lot more of a background that we never heard before. Not only where he's been, who his friends were, the history of the hat that he wears, it's all there. His preferred drink, it's cool. It's cool information. It's, fiction, obviously fiction, but it's really fan fiction if you think about it, because all of these things that I'm going to mention now are in the world of fan fiction. Even all those videos I mentioned on YouTube of people that speculate the Palmer Norris, who came first scenarios, same thing. It's all fan fiction. It's, I think this is that. And what he did after that, he has a whole bunch of other books he wrote. From what I understand, they're in that world. In other words, in that universe, if you will, within those timelines, maybe even some character overlaps. But another book that he kind of put together that is available for free download. He didn't turn it into an actual print book. And obviously this one, he was able to use all the actual names of the characters because it's free and it's on his website. And it's fan fiction, if you think about it. It's called Fragments of the Outpost. Once again, if you go to outpost31.com, you can download it for free. It's 60 some odd pages long. And what he did here was he kind of turned it into a 12-part anthology of events that take place during the movie that we never get to see. So a lot of those moments where you're questioning what's going on here? Who was the first one? Who was the second one? Where was Childs? Where was the, Clark? Where, when people disappear and come back, it basically tells you exactly what happened. Who destroyed the blood supply? Who picked up those keys that Windows dropped? A lot about the creature itself and how it functions. In his version of this, he has Palmer being the first one. And again, he makes a very good argument. It is backed up by, like I mentioned before, the map of where the dog goes and now, yes, there is also the possibility, if you really think about it and you explore all the possible options, that during that initial shot of the dog entering the room with the shadow, it's possible that nothing happened. There's a possibility also that was just a misdirection, just to make us crazy, just to put more doubt in us. Palmer and even Norris could have been transformed in a completely other scenario that we don't even know about. But in his book here, in that particular chapter of the story, because what's cool about it is that, the chapters jump. These 12 different stories kind of jump based on information that is not there in the movie. So if there's a whole sequence in the movie, for example, the dog attack, the dog kennel attack, we kind of jump before it and we jump afterwards. So we kind of skip the stuff that we already know about and jump to the events that are theorized. But it's put together as a book, as of this is what happened in the story. There's a couple of things, and I really, again, if you're a big The Thing nerd, this is great. I think you're going to like it. I think, you might not agree with all the decisions, but that's okay. It's fan fiction. It's theorizing. I mean, we know that Carpenter made it like this on purpose. He didn't want to give you those direct answers. He wanted to keep you guessing, and that's what he definitely succeeded in. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the end of the story in terms of this particular book. Goes all the way to the end and a little bit beyond the end. And it kind of gets me to the point where I understand some possible assumptions. For example, Childs. There's this whole thing about him disappearing at the end of the movie and then coming back completely at the end. And he seems to possibly be wearing a different jacket. The color seems a little different. But I did read some interviews that, as far as the producer claims, there was no change of outfit for him. But in the movie, they show us how you have all these coats hanging, and then when it's time to return, there's a coat missing. There's a certain coat missing. And, the coats on the hooks are out of order, and one is completely missing, which would kind of, again, on purpose, maybe it's another red herring that they're kind of throwing in our direction to make us think that maybe he was converted, so he needed new clothes right away, a new jacket. Okay, fine, possibly, who knows? But he definitely, in this story, goes in a certain direction, and not only goes in a certain direction, but he takes it beyond that into, well, what about MacReady? What happens at the end? What happens at the end of the end of the end, to these two characters? And that's something I wish that maybe he hadn't gone that far. But then I think to myself, there's a reason why these couple of films that he made, which I believe it's called the Apocalypse Trilogy, which is The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. The reason being that these are films that are very nihilistic and very kind of like the bad guys win feel you get at the end of the films. They're very sort of end of the world-ish kind of films, if you will. And The Thing, if you think about it, for it to really be an apocalyptic film, it has to give you the idea that the thing wins. The thing gets what it wants, and at a certain point, it's going to find its way into civilization. MacReady is not going to outsmart the thing. There are so many theories out there, and they're fantastic theories. He didn't use all of them. Yes, obviously, he didn't use all of them. One of them having to do with MacReady giving Childs the bottle of scotch, and he substituted the scotch with, fuel, and Childs not understanding or tasting the fuel because he's a freshly minted thing. So he is indirectly poisoning him. And that's why MacReady kind of is laughing at the end, because he just poisoned Child. Again, that's another one of these far-flung theories. I mean, there are theories that out there of MacReady being the thing from the beginning, all the way from the start, more or less, which, it's a little too far-fetched. But yeah, there are so many possibilities. And in this particular novel, Todd Cameron was able to put it in a place where it kind of makes a good companion piece, a second good, one good companion piece to the Thing story is the Snowblind story. And then another good companion piece is this one, the Fragments of the Output story. Now, interestingly enough, one of the things that I noticed, again, we're talking about going down the rabbit hole here, where we're deep, deep, deep on the rabbit hole. And I did notice that in his PDF, because obviously, the way you download this particular story, you either click on a PDF or a Word file, or one of the two, I forget. So I did notice that in the one that I was reading stated that at one point, Knowles was roommates with Clark. And then on another one stated that Knowles was roommates with Norris. So I had those questions, and while I was doing the research for this, and even for myself to kind of convince myself of, okay, here's how I think everything happened, or in order to support his theories of how things happen. How many people are in a room and who doesn't have a room and why is what room empty and why does so-and-so doesn't have a, why, who is his roommate? Who is that roommate? He doesn't even know all the answers to that, obviously, because part of it comes from the movie. You watch the movie and in those very short scenes that we talked about earlier, you can kind of extrapolate things because they're right there. You see a guy walks out of that room. That must be his room, period. Boom, there it is. But he did have to make some decisions, not based on concrete information. It's your idea. I watched also an interview that he did for a different podcast, I believe, where he was talking about how he kind of mapped it out in both ways. He kind of mapped out Palmer being the first infected and how that affected everybody else, and then making Norris the first infected and how that would work. And then he basically had to make a decision. You have to make a decision for the sake of the story, or else the story doesn't get written. So one of the things that he did also add here is making Knowles roommates with Clark. So I wrote him, and he says, yeah, that was an error. He accidentally put it twice. So he went back, because I just checked, and he deleted Norris as him being roommates with Knowles. According to him, it's Clark, which then brings us then to, all right, that means if we follow his logic is also, as I mentioned very early, McReady is in the shack. We all know that. And Gary has his own place. I still haven't been able to find any concrete proof that Gary has his own place. So Norris either, here's the choice we have. Norris either is roommates with Windows, or he is the guy living in the 6th room, the empty room, that first room on the left. Which, does that mean anything? No, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't solve anything. But if we believe, in other words, if it's true that the first infected person is the first person that the dog goes into the room, assuming that's not a red herring, that's the first place. I think we have 100% certain that that room is Palmer and Child's room. And on the particular day, a particular time where he went in, Childs wasn't in there. It was just Palmer. And that's how that happened. That's how we get our first infected character that then everything, follows after that. I would encourage everybody, and again, by everybody, I'm talking about the Thing nerds out there, to look up some of those YouTube videos for the different theories of the Order. There's tons of articles also on the Order. Go to Outpost 31. There's a ton of information there. Those maps are very helpful. And in a way, little by little, we get to kind of decipher things. Like, for example, when Windows drops the keys and the whole thing about who had the keys last, I completely didn't realize the fact that he dropped the keys. So it's like, yeah, by him dropping the keys, that means that somebody then has access to those keys and then somehow has to put them back or give them back or, sneak them back into somebody so that nobody understands what the hell happened to that damn key. The whole situation with Blair, when exactly did he become a thing? This story addresses it. What exactly happened to Knowles? We never see it. In this book, we do get to know his fate, and same thing with Gary. We really, not too much, but we kind of see exactly, what happened to Gary. And this takes us all the way to the end, into sequences that we never got to see in the movie. So I definitely, once again, recommend this. Todd Cameron has other books that he writes, and like I mentioned, they are within that universe of, Florida and crime and noir, all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of direction his books are going. I don't think they're so directly connected to anything The Thing related, but at least connected to that snowblind locations and kind of world that we, that pre-Thing world, if you will. All right. Well, I wish you good luck in your trips down the rabbit hole when you do fall into these things. This is definitely one of those things that I started picking at it, and it's kind of like an itch that you had to scratch, and you cannot stop until you figure out exactly what you're dealing with. Because this one was really, really getting to me. I had to rewatch The Thing a number of times and fast forward and look for the shots. I even watched the prequel to see if the prequel had any recreations of bedrooms and the bunks and all that stuff, because from what I remember, they kind of reused the same sets. Obviously, they destroyed them, but yeah, there's so much stuff out there. And if you are, into this sort of thing, this is a great place to go and explore.
You can collect them all.
You are a toy!
Batteries not included.
Just get those wonderful toys.
Details on specially marked packages at participating stores.
Is that the $6 million man's boss?
It's Oscar Goldman.
Why do you have that?
That's worth a lot of money. That's much more valuable than Steve Austin.
Action figures each sold separately.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
Some assembly required.
All your favorite Star Wars heroes and villains.
I have 3 of each. 1 to display, 1 to open, and 1 just in case.
While we're on the subject of The Thing, I wanted to talk about a little bit about some figures that I've been getting the last couple of years. I talked about the first one, believe it or not, about 3 years ago, which was the NECA McCready figure from The Thing. I also talked about the shining face logo The Thing figure that NECA also put out. We did reviews on those, but ever since then, 2 have been put out, and I've gotten them. There have been a few more. So I want to talk about those a little bit. First up, I want to talk about the McCready with the flamethrower. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, and it's a little bit of a disappointing cheat, if you will, but it is what it is. I'd rather have that than nothing. I mean, there are many, many other characters in the movie that I wish they would make, but up to now, they've made 3 different McCreadys. The second one being the flamethrower one. The first one was the one that first came out with the shotgun and the lamp on his hand and the scotch bottle. You interchangeable, different hats, different hands, which was great. This second one is pretty much the same in terms of what he's wearing. Same color pants, the same color jacket, similar interchangeable heads, but the big difference with this particular one is the accessories. This one comes primarily, the big deal about it is the flamethrower. It has that flamethrower that he puts on his back and the handle and the fake fire coming out of it. So it's a great piece. At the time, it's kind of like, well, now you have 2 McCreadys and you have the logo creature, if you will. So that was pretty neat. One of the common problems, and I think I've mentioned this before, with either this or other figures, is that they are top heavy. And even though I've been able to put some of them, on those big round, large figure stands, they're still too top heavy and they will fall forward or back. They have kind of weak ankles, but there's really nothing we can do about it. I purchased a product, like a liquid. You're supposed to put a few drops into the ankle joints to kind of stiffen up the ankles to make them a little more difficult to bend. I think I have to try a little more to see if it helps. However, last year, I don't remember if it was Christmas or maybe this year, my birthday or something, one of the presents I got were these special figure stands. Again, for large figures, but these are not just base stands. These are these kind of claw things that hook onto either the head or the waist of the figure, and then you have an entire full L-shape, kind of like a C-stand contraption that holds them in place, like they're not going anywhere. They're a little bulky in terms of how much material you have there. It's all clear plastic anyway, but especially for those big, heavy ones, they really come in handy because the weight. Another problem with this particular figure that I had, and I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think it was me trying to pose them. And once again, we talked about this in the past. These are very fragile figures. Very fragile figures. The flamethrower handle, in trying to get it to be held properly, I managed to snap it. And part of the flamethrower tank that goes on his back, there was a piece somewhere in the bottom, I think, I forget exactly where, that, again, I managed to snap it. And in the past, I've tried, even with this figure, I tried just kind of gluing it back on, but I've been finding, and it's nothing new to people that customize figures or try to repair figures, I'm sure, but to me, just the gluing along doesn't do it. The second you apply the slightest bit of pressure when you're reposing the figure, or God forbid you drop the figure. Boom, snaps right off. So what I did with it is something that I used to do in the past, and I forget what exactly it was. I think it might have been trying to repair old figures. And what I do is when you have a very small piece, very thin piece, let's say, that snaps, made out of plastic or some kind of rubbery kind of alloy or something, what I do is I drill 2 holes into the broken piece, one on each side, and then I attach a paperclip chunk, a little tiny paperclip chunk, whether it's a large size paperclip or a medium or a small size, depending on the thickness of what I'm fixing. And then you can kind of squeeze those together, and then you apply the crazy glue or whatever glue you're using, and then you have a double protection of both the glue that will hopefully hold it together, but a rod going through the center to kind of brace the entire piece so that if something does happen, it will not just snap again. So that seemed to help. And I mean, it looks great. It's a fantastic figure. Again, it's a little repetitive in terms of, oh yeah, another McCready. Now he's holding this. Well, recently, probably last year, I would imagine it was. I can't remember right now. They put out a third McCready. Once again, he's wearing the same clothes, but this time around, he is from the end scene of the movie where he's carrying the dynamite and the Molotov cocktails and the detonation box and a torch. The entire figure is covered with a very slight white dusting, which is, I guess, the snow. It has some repeat items like the hat. They included a hat once again, with a little bit of snow on it. Even his detachable, swappable faces are slightly tinged with white, his beard and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's nice that they make an effort and give you a little more. But these 3 McCreadys, really, the difference when you really, really get to the nitty gritty of it, it's the accessories. You're really buying new accessories on all of them. I'm pretty sure they don't have to make any more because 3 is enough. This is from NECA. Now, will they make others? Well, they made, which I got, again, maybe a couple months ago, maybe 2 months ago or something like that, the dog. So the dog, it's a crazy, crazy set. The dog is basically the dog from the kennel. And you can rearrange the dog in multiple scenarios, let's say. One is the normal looking dog with the normal dog head. But then you can swap out the head for the partially peeled back, thing head that's coming out of the dog, the spider legs that start to crawl out of the dog, those wormy tentacle things that are also coming out of the dog. So it is a hideous looking, gross interpretation of the dog. And then that particular set comes with the secondary dog, which is the dog that's already been transformed into this disgusting furless tentacle with 2 giant hands going up in the air dog, which is again from the scene where the creature is escaping the kennel. It is fantastic in terms of the sculpting. It's just simply gorgeous. It is difficult to put together, I'll tell you that much. It comes with instructions, but specifically not so much the spider dog, but the tentacle dog, let's call him, the bigger one with the 2 arms. There are so many tentacles included and so many different places where you can put them, but there's also things you have to remove in order to put the tentacle in, and sometimes it's very difficult because the tentacles, and even the spider legs that the dog itself has, they're on a very slight ball and joint mechanism. And a lot of times, no matter how hard you press, it will just not go in. Because I think there's 2 different sizes of holes running around this particular set. I managed to snap one, and I wasn't going to fix it. So what I ended up doing was I took that extra tentacle that I couldn't find another place to put it, and no matter how much I pressed, it would not snap into place. But you don't miss it, I'll tell you that much, because the secondary one, the naked dog one, the furless one, it is just a big blobbery, disgusting mess of a thing that no matter how you place it, it is just disgusting. Yeah, it definitely doesn't look like it's missing anything. But again, as far as NECA goes, these are the only things they put out. I'm hoping that they will put out some more. Now, if you think about it, they could go a little nuts. The original company that put out some of the first ones, of this kind was McFarlane. If you guys remember the movie Maniac line from the, 90s, I think it was, mid-90s. They're the first ones that dabbled a little bit into some of the creatures from The Thing, and I think they even had a set, if I remember right, that had a MacReady kind of shooting at the dog creature. I believe that was a set, if I remember right. All of these McFarlane ones are super, super hard to find and expensive. I would say if you're willing to spend a lot of money, they're not that hard to find. But if you're looking for a bargain, they are a little bit of a difficult feat. Which brings me to something I got for my birthday this past February. And this is something my son got me. And it's like, wow, this is especially for somebody like me. He was able to find me a McFarlane Blair Monster. Now, the Blair Monster, if you guys remember, is the one that we see at the end of the film. The one that pops out of the ground and MacReady throws the dynamite at it and it explodes and all that stuff. That's the one they made. Now, let's keep something in mind here, that these McFarlane ones, they're gorgeous. Again, they are just simply gorgeous. They're very much in line with the creatures that have been made. However, and I have a feeling this is something you just cannot get around, the fact that they are not in scale to even each other, I would say. And I say that because they also produced a Norris creature one, which is the creature that comes out of Norris's chest and then the spider head. They produced that too. And the other one, which is the one I mentioned, the MacReady and Dog set, those are not in scale to each other. This particular one that I got, that my son gave me, in theory, I think should be at least twice as big or twice as tall. Because in the movie, if you remember right, it's a big thing. And MacReady's kind of looking at it up. It's a tall, big, bulky monster. And here, it's funny because it is actually slightly shorter than MacReady. So it's not perfect, but it's gorgeous. The sculpting is incredible. The amount of work that these McFarlane's ones have. And it has, unfortunately, let me down the typical rabbit hole we're all used to me talking about it. That is that I have found and ordered a Norris McFarlane. I finally found one it's an open figure. Hopefully it has all the parts. It looks to me like it has all the parts, but for the particular price that I got it, I don't care if I'm missing a piece or two. It doesn't really matter. It looks to me like the main pieces are all there, but that will at least give me everything that's been produced that is not a repeat of itself. So, for example, I'm not going to be hunting down the MacReady and Dog set because I have 3 MacReadys already, and I do have the dog already. If I remember right, the MacReady and Dog is MacReady without his jacket. Now, all of my MacReadys have jackets on, so I don't want to fall on that under that trap. Hopefully I won't have an update regarding, oh God, I had to ended up looking for it and I ended up finding one, but you never know with these things. I hope NECA continues to put these out. There's so many characters and obviously there's no way in hell that they're going to make all the characters. I would be shocked if they even make a second character because a lot of the characters, in the manner that they are, they're not very exciting or shocking, if you will. There's nothing wow about them. I mean, yes, you could put one of them with a flamethrower. You can have Childs with a flamethrower, for example. That could be done. Or you can have Palmer with his head wide open. That's another monster they could do, with windows being eaten. You could do that. But as far as the other ones go, it's really, really tough to expand that line. And the fact that they've already made 3 MacReadys tells me that they really don't want to go in the direction of having to make more molds. I mean, I think they've squeezed the life out of the MacReady mold as much as possible by, just exchanging all the accessories. But it would be great to have a couple of more of these classic characters. But that's all we have for now. And when I get my Norris, and if there is something that comes afterwards, I will let you guys know. All right, just as it's happened a couple of times before, as we're putting the show to bed, all of a sudden, I couldn't wait anymore, and I did a search for the Norris Thing monster from McFarlane, and I found one, and I ordered one, and I got it, and man, oh man, is this thing hideous. It is just amazing the amount of detail that McFarlane did on this particular creature. The cool thing about it is that the package comes with 2 figures. One of them is the thing that pops out of the chest of Norris, hence the Norris Thing, and it's got its all, the disgustingness coming out with 2 arms and a big snaky kind of head with a humanish looking head, and these claw tentacle things coming out of the top. And then separate, we get a spider head from the "you gotta be you know what me" scene from Palmer. Again, it's just fantastic. The head, the legs. It's funny, the legs, because I mentioned this before. One of the legs snapped at the joint. These are very fragile, and they're very old too. So no kidding. So I had to perform a little surgery in one of the 6 legs. I had to put a little metal paperclip rod, put a little glue, drill the holes, and reattach them. So now it's there. It's fantastic. I really cannot believe I never bothered getting these when they are, originally were being put out, since I did buy so many of other ones. But this is a perfect addition to it. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is that, because I'm kind of nuts, I started looking at that other dog McCready kennel set. And it is not a McFarlane. I thought it was a McFarlane. It is not. It's called Soda Toys, a completely different company, also from around that time. And I considered buying it. The McCready figure is not as good as the NECA ones, the current ones. The face detail is not there. Just overall, the detail is not there. But it's kind of neat that he's, just wearing his shirt and not wearing the jacket on top. The dogs, well, it comes with 3 dogs. One of them is pretty much the NECA dog, the one that's changing, but it does have a couple of other dogs that are mid-change, if you will. So, yeah, it would be nice to have them. There's one dog that looks like it's covered in spaghetti, which is a dog that's been completely taken over. And the whole thing comes with a plastic backdrop of the kennel and the door. So I was considering for a minute, but then I made the mistake of looking on eBay, and you're dealing with $200, $300, $400, whatever is out there. I did find one of these crazy links that take you to a store that was offering it for like $30, and it's one of these dead links, stores that are kind of defunct. And if you do a search for the name of the store, you get all kinds of like scam alerts and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, that's not happening. But I was actually considering buying it really for the extra dogs. I mean, especially for $20, $30. I mean, but yeah, there's no way in hell I'm paying a couple of hundreds for that one. Specifically, like I said, since the figure is just not up to the quality of the current ones. But yeah, that's it, man. Just wanted to give you guys that little extra bit of information, that came at the last minute. And that's, again, part of the reason why I held off on publishing this episode, because wait a minute, all I need is one more and I'm done. And there it is. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. We started off with the theory of assimilation for the Thing. Like I mentioned earlier, I went through a lot of different places, and there's so many good point of views. There's so many good cases. Even today, after this show was completely done, more or less, I watched a couple of new videos, to me at least, of some other YouTuber who has his own theory. And it's like, wow, this guy, there's some good, very good points being made here. But I guess this is just going to continue with more theories coming out until either one day John Carpenter tells us exactly what it was and how it happened and who is and who isn't. Or maybe after his death, somebody will write a book or something saying that, hey, listen, John told me this is exactly how it happened. So hopefully we'll one day, get the story straight. And then we also talked about some toys, some action figures, Thing-related action figures that I've been collecting for a while, and how on the last, I would say during the last year or so, I've had a good run of more NECA figures and getting a couple of those original McFarlanes that are fantastic. You know, just in case you guys are looking for them, they're still out there, and you can get a bargain every now and then. So thank you everyone for listening, and hope to see you soon here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
$100,000 years ago, it found its way into our galaxy. Trapped in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, it could not escape. Now the men of Station 4 have made a monumental discovery. An alien creature had frozen, but not to death. And man,
it isn't Benny,
is the warmest place to hide.
If you would like to subscribe to our show, send us messages, or see video links to some of the topics we talked about today, please visit our homepage at geekfestrants.com or our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or iTunes at GeekFest Rants.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
GeekFest Rants is produced by Carlos Perone, copyright 2024.
This broadcast is part of the IC Robots Radio Network. Visit icrobots.com for this and many other nerd/nostalgia related podcasts. You won't be sorry for long.